Chapter 1, Blindness. Snowflakes drifted across the sky, bringing with them the icy chill of winter. Before too long, a sheet of white frost covered North Face City. Winter had arrived yet again. Few travelers walked the roads at this time of the year, leaving the streets desolate of life. No one was willing to leave the comforts of their home during the cold winter season of the 12th lunar month. Within in the city, in one of the classrooms of Luo Official Elementary School, one would find a warm and comforting scene playing out. Warm yang stones were placed in corners of the elementary school classroom, keeping the cold air at bay with light and warmth. Instead, the classroom basked in a warmth reminiscent of spring. This classroom was occupied by a group of 11 and 12-year-old children, attentively listening an instructor's lecture. The last emperor of the radiant divine dynasty was Emperor Yao, who reigned for 600 years. Muddle-headed, incompetent, and cruel, this emperor squandered money like it was water. During his reign, he constructed 124 new temporary imperial residences. He drafted women from all over the country 32 times. Also, it was rumored that he deeply enjoyed killing with his own hands. It is said there are records of his orders to kill over 3,000 officials which implicated countless men. The instructor's lecture was quite earnest. However, the children were clearly uninterested. Even children who were trying their best to listen had already begun to drowse, lulled by the monotonous drone. As the instructor saw their eyelids droop, he didn't bother with words. Instead, he slowly rolled up the book in his hand, and brought it down in a sharp smack against his desk. The sharp table slap startled the group of children, now fully awake as they looked at their instructor with still unfocused eyes. With a bit of helplessness and anger, the instructor said, "What? Have you already learned this?" The children all shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their gazes falling to the floor. The children clearly found this dry course completely uninteresting. Their nature ran more towards having fun. Slightly irritated with them, the teacher pointed at a child. "Xuanhuan, stand, tell me, how did the spirit writing rebellion come about?" A long aquiline nose marked him from the others as the child attempted to answer the instructor's question. However, even after a few stuttering starts, he didn't find the answer he was desperately searching for. "If you don't know, then stay standing. Yu Yang, would you care to enlighten the class?" The instructor pointed at another child. The child called Yu Yang also clearly didn't know. A helpless smile on his face, he could only join Xuanhuan as he stayed on his feet as well. The instructor went through a few more children, but none of them had an answer for him. The teacher once again slapped the table in annoyance. "Atrocious. This is truly atrocious. I just lectured about this. Xuanhuan, can you answer the question?" As he uttered the name, the instructor's mood had turned expectant, clearly awaiting satisfaction. A small youngster with delicate features stood up. In a clear, confident voice, he answered the instructor, "The New Star Era, in the year 23,000. The Great Minister of Public Works, Xuanhuan, reported to the emperor that the treasury was empty and requested that the construction of 4 imperial residences be postponed. Emperor Yao was furious and personally executed Great Minister in the royal court. This matter shook both the imperial court and the commoners as they began to feel like everyone was at risk. Finally, 7 great lords banded together and jointly dealt with Emperor Yao, extinguishing and overthrowing the radiant divine dynasty. Because the assassin Xuanhuan approached and killed Emperor Yao while pretending to perform spirit writing, history named this incident the Spirit Writing Rebellion. After that, the radiant divine dynasty was destroyed and the 7 great clans split the country, setting up separate divine dynasties. This is the origin of our current 7 countries. Well said. The instructor happily clapped. Here. This is what it means to go to class. Were it not for Xuanhuan, I wouldn't be here to teach you little scoundrels. As expected, his upbringing is impeccable. The children produced by the great clans are truly distinctive. An endless and embellished litany of praises followed each other out of the instructor's mouth, each one tripping over each other in their eagerness to fill the air. The Su clan was one of the 4 great clans of North Face City, holding a prestigious status within the city. Xuanhuan was one of the Su clan's 3rd-generation children. Although only 12 years of age, Xuanhuan was far more level-headed than his peers. He was both diligent and eager to learn, quickly earning himself a place as a favorite of instructors. Despite the instructor's praises growing ever more extravagant, Xuanhuan remained undisturbed. In the instructor's eyes, this serenity was seen as a manifestation of a general's grace and indicative of a mind that possessed intricate thought. In the eyes of the other children, this was obviously pretentiousness. TCH. What is there to cherish? Let's compare in body tempering. Xuanhuan's eagle nose twitched as he grumbled under his breath. Xuanhuan, Xuanhuan reached body tempering 4th layer yesterday. Yu Yang whispered to him. Xuanhuan's thin face immediately turned unsightly. It was clearly obvious that the person he considered his opponent was not only academically outstanding, but was also faster than him in martial Dao cultivation. Body tempering 4th layer implied that Xuanhuan had already reached the strength of 4 horses. Although this level of power was negligible compared to most adults, it had already reached the point where he could crush Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan's will to fight vanished like a doused fire. His mouth twitched as he forced out his next words, so what? In the end, he's just the descendant of a mixed blood clan. This time, Xuanhuan's verbal attack had finally found a mark. This world was known as the primordial world. In this world, one obtained power by cultivating one's origin energy. It was said that the source of these incredible abilities was rooted in the creation of the world. Therefore, the energy pervades, affects, and controls all living beings. This hypothesis received widespread acknowledgement and became one of the tenets that explained origin energy. Once one became skilled enough at using origin energy, one would then become known as an origin chi scholar. However, the power of origin energy was not something so easily grasped. Long ago, humans did not understand the mysteries behind origin energy. The only creatures capable of using it were origin beasts. At that time, mankind was nothing more than food for the origin beasts. After countless years of development, the primordial world gradually saw change. Humanity eventually developed the 7 origin scholar territories, creating a haven for themselves as they slowly started to comprehend the mysteries of origin energy, moving away from their previous state of complete ignorance. The keys that allowed humanity to use origin energy were bloodlines. It was said in order to obtain the power to use origin energy, humans invented the bloodline extraction instrument. Demonic beasts were the sole existences in the primordial world that were innately capable of using origin energy. By extracting their bloodlines, humanity was finally able to wield this power themselves. The people who created this bloodline extraction instrument went on to establish a glorious age for humanity, becoming the radiant divine dynasty. However, over the years, this once glorious human nation had finally perished from its own depravity. It was said during that age of turmoil, the bloodline extraction instrument was destroyed in the chaos of war. From that moment on, humans lost the power to extract bloodlines. Fortunately, bloodlines could be inherited. As a result, the 7 human countries formed a system of bloodline nobility. Although the Su clan was a great clan of North Face City, it was considered a junior clan as they had no bloodline inheritance. Only through blood spirit medicines would they be able to obtain the power of bloodlines. Blood spirit medicine was an imitation of the bloodline extraction instrument. However, the difference in its effectiveness compared to the genuine bloodline extraction instrument was like the gap between heaven and earth. Those who acquired bloodlines through blood spirit medicine were known as mixed bloods, implying they were inherently unqualified to be a noble. Not only was their potential to rise limited, their bloodlines were incapable of being inherited. But even as such, there were countless people that madly attempted to attain them. As a result, those without bloodlines, even if they had great talent, even if they diligently cultivated, were doomed to have limited prospects, such as Xuanhuan. Obviously, Xuanhuan's circumstances weren't much better. The names the Desolate Blood King clans, Demon Blood Noble clans, and Mixed Blood clans could clearly be seen within the bloodline inheritance system. The so-called four great clans were mixed blood clans, implying that none of them had bloodline inheritances. Not a single of the four clans were exempt. However, this didn't stop Xuanhuan from looking down upon his rival. If their finish lines was the same, Xuanhuan could only arrive there faster, temporarily in front. The aquiline-nosed youth used this distinctive reasoning to comfort himself. Time passed by quickly. Eventually, the time for classes ended. The children charged out of the school with a cheer. Their respective clan servants were already outside waiting for them. Xuanhuan was the last to leave the elementary school. As he walked out, a young servant ran forward and draped a white fox cloak over him. "Ah, fourth young master is out of school. The weather is bitterly cold, don't catch a chill." "Xuanhuan, didn't I already say this? I've already reached body tempering 4th layer. This kind of weather won't make me cold." Xuanhuan said this as he walked toward the carriage. "Young master, this isn't just about practicality. You must wear it for appearance's sake." Naturally, servants who know that young master have already reached the 4th layer of body tempering will see that the coatless young master is tempering himself with the frost and snow. Other servants who aren't aware of young master's brilliance will see young master without a cloak and believe the young master has fallen from grace. At that time, I fear they wouldn't treat young master seriously. Xuanhuan said as he followed behind Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan smiled when he heard this. "Only you would say something like this. Who wouldn't take me seriously? Besides, if I want something, there is always you." Xuanhuan's aggrieved cry echoed loudly from within the carriage. The coachman lashed his horses with his long whip and the carriage moved forward, leaving a clear track of hoof prints behind. As there was nothing to do in the carriage, Xuanhuan took a history book to read. The youthful servant Xuanhuan at the side was bored and said, "Young master, is that history book any good? When I read it, it isn't interesting at all and I always get sleepy." Without even raising his head, Xuanhuan said, "That is because you don't see the stories that are hidden in the book." "What stories are concealed in the book?" Xuanhuan was astonished and repeatedly looked at the book with greatly curious eyes. Were stories actually concealed in this book? Xuanhuan glanced at him. "It's not hidden in the book. It's the actual stories within." "Ah, even if I told you, you wouldn't understand." Xuanhuan bluntly put his book in front of Xuanhuan. "Look at this section." Xuanhuan has followed Xuanhuan for several years and could read a few words. He read it out loud. "The assassination of Emperor Yao, great turmoil of divine dynasty, bloodline extraction instrument was lost in the chaos of war, creating a severance in bloodline extraction methods. Until now, humans could only copy the partial capability of the bloodline refinement instrument by refining blood spirit medicine, incapable of extracting high-quality bloodlines like in the past." "What about this section?" Xuanhuan didn't understand. Xuanhuan took back the book and said, "Don't think it's strange? Since the bloodline extraction instrument is a human invention, why were we not able to recreate it after it was destroyed?" Xuanhuan replied, "Didn't the book say it? Its method of creation had already been destroyed." "Why was it destroyed? This is a great matter that affects the rise and decay of humans. How could it be lost?" Xuanhuan asked. Xuanhuan had no answer. Xuanhuan then said, "Fine, let's leave its destruction aside. It could have happened for any number of reasons. But then why were there not many sets of the instrument made? According to the book, This bloodline extraction instrument could only extract 10 bloodlines every year. Why didn't they create more instruments if they only had one set? Even if we leave that aside, and accept that the method to create the bloodline instruments is lost, why is it that humans haven't managed to discover the method again? Since we were able to previously achieve it, why is it that we are now simply unable to? This barrage of questions stunned Jiangxin into speechlessness. Xuanhuan patted the book with a smile. This is the story that is hidden in the book. Thus, you can't just read books using only your eyes. You must use your mind as well. He said this with a somewhat proud voice. The words he said a moment ago were actually taught to him by his father. Now he was using them to educate his own servant. Xuanhuan still appeared confused and looked at Xuanhuan with admiration. Then why does young master think that it is like this? In the end, Xuanhuan was still a child. Naturally, he completely enjoyed Jiangxin's gaze of admiration. He said, I have an answer in mind. However, you must promise to never speak of it. Jiangxin patted his chest and pledged, be at ease, young master. I absolutely will not speak of it. Hearing this, Xuanhuan was at ease. Although he was intelligent, he was only 12 years old after all. He didn't genuinely comprehend how precious and scarce people who kept their words were. Thus, he lowered his voice and said, I believe that bloodline extraction instrument fundamentally wasn't a human invention. What? Jiangxin was shocked. Then who? Xuanhuan spread out his arms. How could I know? That's the only explanation that makes sense to me. The reason why humans were incapable of creating the bloodline extraction instrument but were still able to possess it? However, you can't ever speak these words of mine out loud. In an age that couldn't be considered enlightened in the least, to question the validity of history of the human race was certain to bring about trouble for him. Certainly at this time, a light chuckle sounded in Xuanhuan's ear. Xuanhuan's eyes widened. Stop the carriage! Xuanhuan loudly shouted. The carriage stopped. Xuanhuan leaped out of the carriage, looking up and down the street as far as he could see. All he could see were falling snowflakes. The large street only had a few pedestrians walking. He couldn't see anyone who looked like the person who chuckled in his ear. Young master, what is it? Jiangxin stretched his head out of the carriage and asked. Xuanhuan shook his head and replied, it's nothing, let's return. Xuanhuan turned around, meaning to climb back into the carriage. He heard an old man's voice from behind him, young master, please have pity. Pity this old beggar and give him some hot food. Xuanhuan turned his head and saw a trembling old beggar with a foul scent walking towards him. A broken bowl was grasped in his hand. That old man didn't stand far away from Xuanhuan and extended his broken bowl towards Xuanhuan. His appearance was pitiful, and his eyes were full of emptiness and despair. Xuanhuan sized up the old man, and said, I don't know who you are, but I do know that you aren't a beggar. The old man blankly stared. What does young master mean? Xuanhuan said with a clear voice, it's heavily snowing right now. True beggars would know that if the weather is too cold, pedestrians would be few and far between. Even if you were lucky enough to come across pedestrians, who would stop in the middle of a cold journey to give alms? To try and beg at this time would only result in you freezing without anything to show for it. It's just the wrong time to beg. Moreover, this is Han River Street, the main road of North Face City. In order to prevent traffic obstruction, the city lord has prohibited begging on this road. If beggars do appear here, then the guards would immediately chase them away, beat them up, or even capture them. No beggar would appear at this location. Furthermore, although your clothes are worn and filthy, the tears on your clothes are very clean, showing that your clothes haven't been damaged for long. In addition, the stink on your body is incorrect as well. The scent of a beggar's stink is one of long decay. It is unlike your scent, which is like that of a sewer gutter. Then there are also your hands. Although your body is filthy, your fingernails are very clean. This is also incorrect. After Xuanhuan finished saying this, he looked at the old man, thus, although I don't know who you are, I am certain you are not a beggar. After the old man heard this, he threw his head back in a laugh, ha 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 ha. An impressive youngster. You have some exceptionally observant eyes and an incredible mind for analysis. It is just a pity your age is too young and your experience is a bit lacking, and as such, you are still naive. You understand neither how to hide your own weak points nor the value of a low profile. But this doesn't matter anymore because you've come across me. Now that you've come across me, you will come to learn all of this. Meeting me is your misfortune, for I will bring you suffering. Meeting me is also your fortune, for I will give you a future with unlimited possibilities. Now let me change your eyes. They will let you see much more, see the true appearance of this world. With that said, the beggar raised his hand. Before Xuanhuan could blink, 2 cold spikes had already entered his eyes. After 2, never giving up, 1. The seasons passed, and summer came with a vengeance. On a scorching midsummer day, a group of youths were practicing martial skills in the Xuanhuan main courtyard's martial practice yard. They would occasionally give vent to roars as they practiced in high spirits. Hey! With a strong puff of an exhaled breath, a palm struck the stone pillar, breaking it in a single strike. Good! Cheers erupted from the martial practice yard. The second young master is great. It seems in a few days, he will enter the 5th layer of body tempering. When that moment comes, he will be number 1 among our Xuanhuan's 3rd generation. The target of praise was a 13-year-old youth. Although he was still young, he had a sturdy and powerful build. One of the Xuanhuan's 3rd generation children, his name was Xucheng. Specifically, he was the child of the Xuanhuan's 2nd elder, Xuqiji. 1. Xucheng was obviously enjoying the praises that were being lauded on him by the servants. Even if they weren't completely true, it didn't stop Xucheng from feeling good about himself. But then again, there was always that one inconsiderate idiot. The voice of a young servant piped up, 4th young master has already reached the 5th layer of body tempering a few days ago. Silence fell. Xucheng's face sunk. Everyone present had suddenly quieted at the words. After a moment, a somewhat quick-witted servant scolded the foolish servant, "What kind of nonsense is that? How could a blind child like him compare with the 2nd young master?" The young servant didn't dare retaliate, but he still persisted, "But he's still at the 5th layer of body tempering." His mood souring, Xucheng wasn't willing to continue listening and stalked off, his chin jutting out stubbornly. The group of servants behind them mutually glanced at each other and turned toward the young servant in unison, beating him up thoroughly. Only after he was bloody and battered did they relent, leaving behind curses as they went after their master. To his credit, the young servant was a stubborn thing. He didn't utter a word when he was being beaten, just cradled his head to protect himself. After the group of servants left, he clambered to his feet and dusted himself off, spitting in the direction of the group. He wasn't a follower of the 2nd young master, just a part-time worker at the martial practice yard. He just minded his own business then, taking care of the martial practice yard. Just as he took a few shaky steps out of the yard, he noticed someone standing nearby under a large tree. 4th young master. The young servant was flabbergasted. Xuanhuan was quietly standing underneath the tree, wearing a long white jacket that fluttered with the wind. Although he was a youth only little older than 12, there was an indescribable air of elegance around him. Though his eyes appeared no different from anybody else's, they were dull and spiritless, lacking even the slightest of movement. Hearing the young servant's words, Xuanhuan faintly smiled, "Mingzhu, you were being stubborn again." The young servant smiled, "So young master had heard me." This one was unconvinced on your behalf and spoke a few words out of turn. TL note: Mingshu is addressing the young master with the respectful pronoun nin as opposed to the informal ni. What meaning is there to argue for me? You were beaten to the floor in vain. Mingshu scratched his head. I couldn't bear hearing their drivel. It is obvious that fourth young master is number one among the Su clan's third generation, but they insisted that it was second young master. If he wants to be first, let him. It is nothing worth fighting over. Suchen indifferently answered. I am but a blind child. Even if I have reached the fifth layer of body tempering, I am still blind. Suchen's words hung in the air as he turned and walked into the martial practice yard. Mingshu blankly looked at Suchen from behind. Previously, the fourth young master was high-spirited, glowing with vigor, and filled with self-confidence. However, after that happened 10 months ago, he had completely changed. An old beggar that came from nowhere blinded the fourth young master. From then on, the fourth young master could only see endless darkness. At that time, the fourth young master had sunk into an inescapable whirlpool of suffering. But soon after, he quickly rose above his suffering and continued on his own path of the martial Dao. Even with blinded eyes, he didn't give up. Instead, he progressed even faster, and within several months, he entered the fifth layer of body tempering. Thus, from seeing the fourth young master's perseverance and diligence, Mingshu developed a sincere admiration towards him. This was probably the reason why he spoke those words when Sucheng's lackeys were shamelessly licking their master's boots. Despite being beaten for those words, Mingshu still felt it was worth it. Suchen, already standing in the martial practice yard, said, Mingshu, are you busy? Could you come and lend me a hand for a moment? Ei. Mingshu had just recalled that Suchen couldn't see and hastily ran over, bringing over a pair of heavy stone dumbbells for him. Here, fourth young master. Please be careful. Fourth young master, how are you by yourself? Do you need a servant? I'm already familiar with this place. I'll be fine by myself. I've come here to temper my body, not to be waited upon. If servants were to come, it would actually be worse. As Suchen spoke, he was already lifting the stone dumbbells and had started his practice for the day. Sweat trickled down from his forehead underneath the dazzling, brilliant sunlight. Finishing his exercise for the day, Suchen returned to his own courtyard. His maid took off his clothes and another servant heated water for him. He sat down in the heated bath and felt the warm water wash away his exhaustion. He let out a long breath, and let his mind wander. Suchen recalled the scene when that old beggar struck his eyes with those two cold stars. That bitter experience 10 months ago had left Suchen completely blind. When he woke up from that attack, he could only feel unspeakable pain from his eyes. But what was worse than that incredible pain, was the great fear that the eternal darkness brought. When he had realized he was blind, Suchen had nearly gone mad. Despite the Su clan sending for 10 famous doctors and divine doctors, not a single one could restore Suchen's sight. Suchengan, Suchen's father, was furious. He scoured the city to find this old beggar. However, his search was completely fruitless. That old beggar couldn't be found, and Suchen's eyes were declared to be completely blinded. He was incapable of seeing anything, he wasn't even capable of perceiving light. Suchen had then completely given into despair. That was the most painful moment of Suchen's life. No matter how his family comforted and consoled him, he was unable to break away from the fear and anger brought forth by the darkness. Suchen spent every day of that time wailing from the unbearable pain, or running amok as he smashed everything he could get his hands on. This continued for 3 months before his state began gradually improving. Perhaps because he had grown accustomed to the darkness, or perhaps because he had realized no matter how crazed he acted, his misfortune it was an unchangeable, established fact, Suchen eventually grew clear-headed. He no longer displayed madness and sunk into a long period of silence. This scene caused Suchen's mother, Tang Hong grew to become even more worried, as she feared that her son would commit suicide. But in the end, Xuanhuan did no such thing. Then one morning, he said, "I want to cultivate." Yes, from that day on, he tread once more on the path of martial cultivation as a son of the Su clan. This astonished very many people in the clan. They could not understand what in the end could have caused Xuanhuan to pull himself together so quickly. But in any case, it was a happy occasion. At the time, nobody had expected Xuanhuan to have any success on the path of martial cultivation. Even if a blind person rushed through body tempering, how could he possibly enter the qi absorption stage? At the time, the Su clan members felt sincere happiness from Xuanhuan's clarity of mind. At the same time, they were truly deeply concerned for Xuanhuan and wanted to protect him. That feeling lasted precisely 3 months. After 3 months, Xuanhuan entered the 5th layer of body tempering. Although he was blind, he still appeared to be the most outstanding child of the Su clan's 3rd generation. A feeling of unease began to sprout among some members of the Su clan. One of the ones most affected was Xuanhuan. The second young master has fallen into low spirits. Could he not even beat a blind person? Xuanhuan, properly act like the blind person you are. It is fine if you act weak. We will take care of you. Cherish you. Isn't this enough? Why did your mind grow clear? Why must you diligently cultivate? Why do you still stubbornly progress at shocking speed? Even if you are number 1 amongst the 3rd generation, what would become of it? Do you truly believe you are able to win over someone who can see? You're just a blind kid. Without a doubt, those were the thoughts hidden deep in Xuanhuan's heart. It was likely a few other children of the 3rd generation also held these thoughts. Xuanhuan was able to perceive their thoughts, but it was impossible for him to give up. The words of the old beggar echoed through his mind, "It is your fortune to have met me because I will give you a future with unlimited possibilities. Let me exchange your eyes. It will let you to see much more, see the true appearance of this world. Let me exchange your eyes. Let me exchange your eyes." As Xuanhuan quietly muttered this, a speck of radiant light appeared in his dull, spiritless eyes. Within that unending, limitless darkness, those words were like a candle flame in the dark night, igniting the light of hope in Xuanhuan's heart and becoming the source of his will to never give up.